Prior to meeting Erin, the only impressions I had were from television interviews, and I thought she was a really tough, gnarly bitch.
She wasn't very well liked by her competitors, I think because she won everything.
I did what I needed to do to win events, and if I had to chew a tyre off, I did it. I was a kid from Kaipoi, big family, big, very working class family. There were 8 kids in all, lots of running around the yard, lots of fighting. My father was at the freezing works. They always had a freezing works picnic every year. We used to go on the running races, and there was all these big guys and little kids, and it was always the Baker kids that were in the front.
If you were in a 3-legged race with Erin, you better pull your weight on that, whereas if you were in it with one of your other sisters and one of you fell over, that was funny, but for Erin, that wasn't funny.
I've never been funny or fun. Some kids probably cartwheeled and did high fives to their friends or, yay, mum, hi, but I was just serious.
She went to work in a radiology department up in Darwin, and I think she was as bored as.
So I stayed there and did radiography in a private practice for, 6 or 12 months until my sister sort of came through and she said, let's go and live in Sydney. I had sort of become a little dumpling and thought, well, I've got to get myself a bit fitter again. I think I worked about 45 Ks from where I lived. And so I'd sort of do the bike one way, run home often, run the other way, bike home often. Then that led into my first triathlon.
She talked to her mother and said, I'm going to do this triathlon. And her mother suggested that she call me because at the time I was the sort of New Zealand champion. And I said, well, I'm happy to give you some tips as long as you ring me back and let me know how you got on. And she said, well, I won.
Then I think a week after, there was an event in the Gold Coast area. And so I went to that and I won it. And then the week after I went to another event and I won it.
When we met at a race for the first time, she introduced herself to me. There was this sort of not really athletic-looking, stocky woman with red hair who came up to me and said, I am Erin Baker and I want to be a world champion.
So when I got into triathlon, I thought, this is good. I can do a job at this. This is going to be my job.
She came back to New Zealand. She came to live with me. She said, I'm going to be the best in the world.
Then I heard through sort of the grapevine of triathlon that there was going to be this Ironman in Australia. An Ironman triathlon, before you even get to the marathon, you've swum 3.8K, then you've got a 180K bike ride. It's ridiculous. And I thought, no, I'm going to do that.
Erin's daily schedule would have her well up before me, so she would be in the pool. She'd come home and she would rest, and then it would be a long, long bike ride, like long, almost the length of the South Island. And then she would be out for a run.
So I did that all the time, like all the time. And then I went back to this race, I won.
Erin was first woman home by 40 minutes. There to share the excitement were a sister and also Mum from Christchurch.
With her winning, and winning with big margins, and very soon winning overseas, in particular in Australia, made me realise that she was something special and she probably could go a long way in the sport. So that's when our sort of relationship started, where I became a coach, but more like an advisor, a partner in crime.
John started about that time saying, well, you might as well, go to Europe. He arranged somewhere for me to stay in Amsterdam way. And I just remember this Mercedes coming up this sort of driveway onto this farm, and they had cell phones. It was like, wow, this is, big deal, man, they got cell phones. They said they wanted to meet me to offer me a contract.
I was managing her. I didn't manage her particularly well sometimes. And I remember trying to get Erin to sort of do something with herself, could you put a bit of lipstick on? Or, no way, I'm here to impress them, not with how I look, but to impress them with my ability.
In the first European Ironman Championship. She was leading and she had a puncture. And it was dreadful weather. And she couldn't get the tire off her wheel to change it. That's how cold her hands were. So a bystander came and tried to take the wheel off her. And she was shouting at him, "No, you can't do this. You can't help. I'm not allowed help. I'll be disqualified." He ignored it. So she grabbed her pump, was lying beside her, and started whacking this guy around the head. She ended up tearing the tire off her rim of the wheel with her teeth.
Yeah, see, John Hellerman says I hit someone on the head with a bike pump. I think I'm choosing to forget that. I cannot remember that. I did what I needed to do to win events, and if I had to chew a tyre off, I did it, yeah. I mean, I pulled it off, I don't eat the tyre.
Erin Baker, the European champion, is heading for a unique double. She's also going to be the world champion. How the legs must ache, but still a chance of a wave. And she's absolutely delighted the ambitious girl from New Zealand has won the world title at the first attempt.
At the time, there was still unequal prize money distribution between males and females. She started to boycott events which didn't have equal prize money, and she called on other women to do the same. And some women followed, but a lot of women didn't either, because finally they had a chance.
I had a couple of events. The prize money would be the same, but the first person would win a car as well. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. The first person across the line is always a guy. And that was quite hard for me because Le Coq Sportif, being French, being in France, they were my sponsor. I was very fortunate that that French company didn't sack me because I didn't go.
If you didn't have Erin in your race, you couldn't say you had the best field in the world. That dominance of the sport really forced organisations to treat everyone equally.
If you wanted to be a professional triathlete, you had to go to America to make a living. And that's what she wanted to do. She also knew if she wanted to be considered to be the best in the world, that's the races she had to do, and particularly the Hawaiian Ironman. She wasn't allowed to compete in America because she had a criminal conviction.
So I got involved in Springbok tour activities or protests, really sort of through my mother. She was just incredibly aware of justice. So I think justice was our thing. So we knew apartheid was wrong.
Erin became very involved, so much so that she ended up with a conviction for throwing a smoke bomb at one of the rugby matches.
So I got arrested in Nelson and actually convicted of doing something which I actually didn't do, but that's sort of beside the point.
What did you actually do with that?
Oh, do you want to know what I actually did? So our activity of that day was to try and stop the bus getting from the Rutherford Hotel to the game. So we had these things made. They were basically, and yes, they're not very nice, they were basically nails that stood in a triangle. So if you threw them under a tyre, one nail would stick up to puncture the tyre. So that's actually what I did. I don't think I've told anyone that before. With my conviction, I gave up getting to Hawaii. I couldn't get a visa. I went through all the channels, I couldn't get a visa.
International Management Group, IMG, who I think were very involved in Hawaiian Ironman and wanted to have Erin there, weren't able to because of this conviction. They pursued, I think it was a senator, to help bring her into the US.
She got her visa at the last moment, so she decided to go and do it without really being properly prepared.
I remember landing in Hawaii and thinking, oh, this is a hot hell, and never got my head around the whole thing, and it was a disaster.
Yes, so the whole subsequent year became focused on preparing for the Hawaiian Ironman. We had to do everything which we could to give her an advantage. All competitors during the marathon walked during the drink stations. And so we decided to practice for her to drink while she was running.
The sun had only been up for about 15 or 20 minutes when the swimmers were ordered into the water for the start. There it is. And off they went, almost 1,400 meters.
She was off the pace coming out of the water. She was a couple of minutes behind Paula Newby-Fraser. She caught up on the bike. Finally, we heard an update that at halfway point, Paula was still leading, Sylvia Pontius was getting close, and Erin was still a couple of minutes behind. But that meant to me she was still in the race.
And so I could just see these two other women up the road who were battling for first and second and stopping for water at the aid stations. And I could just see them stopping. I decided not to stop. And I get closer and closer and closer and closer. And then with about, 3 or 4K to go, I passed one. And then a kilometre later, I passed the other. Then you put everything into it. Your race is then, and in fact your race is the next 200 metres because you have to destroy your opponent then. You have to let them know you've got so much more in you when you haven't. Finally, we staggered across the finish line. I've never been so happy to be finished anything in my entire life. I just was finished.
She had done it. Had not only won the race, but in the process had set a new women's course record.
And then along came Scott Molina, an American they call the Terminator. He's one of the big four who dominated men's triathlons during the 80s. Scott and Erin had competed in the same races many times, and then one day they got to talking.
We're now man away.
When I met my husband, Scott, I was almost about to retire, giving up at that stage. And he said, maybe you can just try and have fun at it. Maybe just, relax into it, just have fun. And I did try and have fun. There was certainly a time where I got to in my sport, I thought this is enough. I won enough, done enough. And one day I remember it was, 5 o'clock and Scott was getting up to go for the race and I was like, no, I'm not going. I'd finished radiography and now I'd finished triathlon. Done.
She raced 121 times and she won 104 of those races. And they included 9 world championships across all 3 disciplines.
Prior to meeting Erin, the only impressions I had were from television interviews. And I thought she was a really tough, gnarly bitch. She was a lot more tender and intellectual than the impression I got from the interviews that I'd seen with her.
For a while, she tried politics. She was a city councillor here in Christchurch, but she didn't last very long because the councillors couldn't cope with her honesty. Yeah, there's 2 sides to her. There's this fierce side where she has very strong beliefs and convictions, and there's a really kind side to her and a side with a very strong social conscience. So like all of us, we have different sides, and in her, those sides are very strong.
I'm different to most athletes I know because it just has never defined me and it's just not the most important part of my life. I've got so much more about me. I'm so much more proud of my business life and things like that. To get through a sporting career and have a somewhat normal life is a big deal. I don't remember years of triathlons and what events and what dates and times, and I wouldn't care less if no one remembered any of that. For me, it's always just about being a fair person, a fair, hard-working, good woman.